from the mighty sparrow, good citizens. And we'll be back with you shortly and as we get into the main event for this afternoon's Comfort Zone program, the 22nd edition, the second for the year 2021. I'm Raphael, your host on the GEM FM platform.
Why should they persecute a brother for seeking black power? Don't they know a blind man could see that this is blatant hypocrisy? The real traitors and them are all high in society. Yet the government protecting all of them and penalizing you and me. And in a million different ways they violate the law. It's the same good no good bastards who oppress the poor. They sell in black market, making excess profit, paying a starvation salary. These good citizens are the architects of economic slavery. They say you have the right to criticize, but then you are victimized, and without any reason. Many a time you find yourself politically paralyzed by that same good citizen. Yet these fakes and phonies enjoy a long life of luxury while they spread corruption throughout the country. When they should be arrested, they're protected and respected in the society. And in a million different ways, they violate the law. It's the same good, no good past.
All right, back to you, man.
Yes, Brother John, thank you very much.
Yes.
In a million different ways, violate
the law.
And you know, this is really, it's really telling on certain situations that we face in our country, that we have been facing in our country. But before we get into that, I want to introduce our guests for this evening, this afternoon, I should say. We have with us presently, we have Dr. Stephen Fletcher, and we also have Senator Terry Noel. Good afternoon to you, gentlemen, and welcome to the Comfort Zone, and welcome to GEM FM once again.
Good afternoon, and let me say thank you for having me on the Comfort Zone this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Fletcher, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'm happy to be back in the Comfort Zone. I think this is our first program, well, my first program for the new year with you. Yes. And I want to take this opportunity to wish you and your production team health, first and foremost wellness for 2021, and to whatever else you wish yourself, to wish you more of that. So blessings. I also want to again thank all of your viewers, listeners, wherever they are throughout the world. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, and looking forward to a healthy conversation, healthy exchange between the team of us that will be on this evening's program. So thank you for having me, Pablo and John.
Okay. I'm expecting Mr. Baptiste to return sometime shortly. And in the interim, I want to before we get into the substantive conversation for this evening, because the substantive conversation for this evening is the GRENLEC controversy. But before that, I want to get your thinking on two things. Last week, we had a group of people here with us. We had Delbert Baptiste, we had Ken Lewis, and we had ex-ambassador Mr. Eugene Posu, and
The
who else
executive?
was there? Oh, and my brother Tony Dabrio. And the conversation was the establishment of a more concrete approach for our diaspora in our domestic economy. Being a senator, and you, Dr. Fletcher, with your background in, as an educator, as someone who's done research on, major contributors to our economy, working with regional institutions and so, and having published different papers dealing with economic issues, I just felt it necessary to get an input from you, get a perspective from you on that issue, which I feel is critical. And not just I feel, it is something that you hear discussed time and time again about the importance of our diaspora to our development, the contribution that they make, the significant contribution that they make in terms of remittances and so. But what is required, how do we get to that point where the diaspora can function as a unit, playing an integral part in our development agenda, in getting projects, that serious projects and so, that can generate income for people, provide jobs and so at that level. And I'm going to start with the man who has a seat in the parliament of the country, Senator Terry Noel.
Well, thank you for having me on again, and let me say good evening to the entire public, people of Grenada, Carriacou, PT Martinique, as well as the Grenadians in the diaspora, whichever part of the world that they are listening, and Happy New Year, and so on. Notice the show, the comfort zone, so I guess I should feel really comfortable as we have a chat and so on.
Yes, man, feel comfortable. People are free to express themselves here. And that's why we bring people that we know who have a certain level of confidence, who know what they're talking about, and who can share things that are uplifting for the mind.
Good, thanks. Yes. So, and the topic, the truth about it is, during my budget presentation, I've spoken a bit about it, the diaspora, and I've always been talking about it because I believe that the diaspora, Grenadians abroad, in terms of where we look at remittances, and not just that, but even more, play a very instrumental role and a pivotal role in our economic development, as well as in other areas, whatever, moral support and so on. And I've been, like I remember Maurice Bishop once said in a speech in New York, I think it was, that there are probably more Grenadians in the U.S. in terms of than the population of Grenada. So that alone is just to tell you how important the diaspora is. And maybe I would say too, it is even more important when you have some kind of level of inequality among your, in terms of your development, in terms of people and so on, economically. So you'll find that the remittances and so is very important in terms of alleviating some of the pain and so on that people are going through. So it is very important. I saw some efforts were made. Looking at it, I think it was late last year, before the COVID, so on. Sometime there were, I think the former foreign minister apparently did make some effort in that to set up a diaspora, some kind of office there to probably push this thing forward. But I haven't heard anything from here on as to where that is concerned. But I remember during the COVID time doing some reading, and remember looking at one of the economists who made some comments as to in regards to remittances to the Caribbean and so on. And they were concerned with the pandemic now, which was a global issue, and saying that is a concern because everybody is affected. But at the same time, yet still we see the Western Union and wherever the other outlets are, MoneyGram and so on, filled with people and so on. Because we're talking about a lot of people who have lost their jobs, especially the fact that we heavily based on tourism and so on, and the tourist sector was one of the hardest hit during this time. So people had to depend on people still, try to help their people here in Grenada and so on. So, and again, the fact is that it was a global thing. We would expect it to drop, but still people tried their best and so on. I remember again, they did highlight too that during Hurricane Ivan, which was important for Grenada, they saw that remittances and so on either double or quadrupled in terms of played a pivotal role in bringing, getting the economy back to a certain level and alleviating the pain that people would have to go through for a period of time before they're able to stand on their foot again. So these kind of disasters and so on is important. But at the same time, when you have, we don't pursue a path of sustainability, you find remittances even more important than anything else then. But, so we need, there's also the need to pursue that path though, where we pursue a path of sustainable development. Because if you look at the statistics, you would see that countries where the path that was chosen, which is not so much of a sustainable development, you find a higher level of remittances and so on to the Caribbean, to these countries. Okay. So I would leave it there for a while and let the others.
Dr. Fletcher, what is it going to take for us to move from just remittances to a stage where there's a more concrete and cohesive approach, or involvement of the diaspora in the development of income-generating projects and so on to take us to another level?
Okay, very important question, Pablo, and I'm indeed sorry that I was unable to listen to that program last week. I'm sure it must have been very substantial. And Senator Noel, directly to you, I want to wish you all the best for 2021. And I want to wish you a successful stint in the Senate. Continue the good work.
Thank you, Doc.
Now, this is a very important issue for us, Pablo. The fact that you dealt with it on last week's program is an indication of its value and importance. I
Fletcher,
for...
Dr. Fletcher, hello, just a minute. If I may just intervene here. This subject is not intended to be a one-off. All right? The fact that we had a panel discussing it last week, that was just the beginning. That was sowing the seed. And it is my intention to make it a component of every conversation going forward. So we're speaking of it here. Whoever the guest is going to be next week and the following week is going to form part of the conversation, because it is the expectation that coming out of all of this conversation, that eventually there is going to be some kind of entity, some kind of diaspora entity that will be networking with us here in terms of identifying those economic opportunities, those things that can be developed into projects, how we raise the monies, and so on and so forth, right? To go forward. Because we have to move from that conversation element into something that is practical, that impacts directly on people's lives outside of just remittances. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Pablo, and thanks for setting that broad context of these discussions. I was pointing out to you in my previous role as Grenada's ambassador to the European Union based in Brussels. I had the opportunity to interact with a number of Grenadians throughout Europe, in Germany, Switzerland, and so forth. And there were some common things that was coming through. Additionally, the importance of the diaspora was recognized by the then government, and an initiative was taken and headed by the former foreign minister, Minister Peter David, who also transitioned into this new government as well, to really put in place structures and systems and processes to allow the diaspora to make direct, significant, sustainable, and life-changing investments and involvements in our country. We argued then, and the sentiments that I got from our people outside there, is that they want to go beyond just mere remittances to meet monthly or weekly needs of our people. They want to be involved in sharing of the pie and the expansion of the Grenadian pie. And how do we do that? That is a significant challenge that we face. Our policies towards the diaspora is a clear reflection of also what happens internally, in terms of how we treat our own internally. It is an extension. So, for example, in a very practical and substantial way, when there are significant investments to be made, of which the powers that be has insights and information and all the research, do they take an approach whereby they go and headhunt local persons or encourage local persons to invest in such projects? Generally, it's wishy-washy. If you see and you're interested and you have the money, get involved. But there is not a deliberate policy of engineering, of spurring our local people to get involved in significant investments. I believe for us to move from this remittances flow, of which approximately $2 or so million per month comes into Grenada via diaspora. In fact, Senator Noel indicated of the long lines during COVID and so on. It's not just during COVID, beyond, continuous indication of the somewhat slight dependence or on monies from overseas. We have to begin to make investment opportunities directly available to our people. Not by, in a very superfluous way, mentioning it in the media, but in a deliberate, structured way, through structured messaging, through identifying structured mediums to bring these investments to the attention of our people so that they can get involved in those investments. And there are many ways it can be done. It can be done through the purchase of bonds. It can be done through the direct investment in specific projects. So for example, if there is a poultry project ongoing, there is an agro-based project that is evolving, seek out our people. Tell them, let them know. This is deliberate policy development. This is how you deliberately seek to get your diaspora and your people involved in the investments. Because what obtains currently is that if you have the resources yourself and your idea is in that mode, that's what you're going to follow, all right? And generally, we know the structure of our population, the demographics of it, and we also know of the opportunities and the privileges, underline the word, privileges, that are available to those that are coming outside of Grenada versus those of us who reside in this beautiful island called Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Matou. So deliberate policies, linking with specific projects, linking with developing products and services that allows our diaspora to invest in, say, issues of our road development, issues of agriculture, agro-industries, there is a wealth. And let me end by stating this, listeners, viewers, and our host. You know, when you study the development of India, right, a significant part of India's development, especially in the area of technology, was influenced by their diaspora. The people who are out there, who obtained the advanced knowledge, had the expertise, and had the resources, were deliberately hunted and brought back here. The other point I want to make, sorry, I said that was the last one. An interesting experience I had in Japan in 1988. I entered a program there where they're talking about the development, the economic development of Japan. And one of the things I learned was that the government provided what we might term here scholarships for the Japanese to go overseas and educate themselves and gain higher level skills. But it was not done in a wishy-washy way. It was deliberate, saying you are going to study this field because we have this project or program in place, and you're expected to return and apply your skills and knowledge in this specific area for development. Very similar to what the revolution of 79 to 83 was attempting. All right? So we have to get back to some basics.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Fletcher, and I'm telling you, I am really looking forward to that kind of meaningful engagement that is going to play a transformational role in our communities, in the rural area, and so on. And we have here a gentleman with us, a man with a passion for the rural economy, a man with a passion for rural development, a man, you mentioned poultry a while ago, a man with a passion for the development of the local poultry industry. Brother Michael Baptiste, good afternoon to you, Brother Michael, and welcome to the Comfort Zone. This is the first time in the Comfort Zone. We are accustomed having you on Talking Point, right? This is your first time on the Comfort Zone.
I am happy wherever you want me to be, my brother.
Yes.
The pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine to be on your program today.
Yes. Well, actually, as we know, the main talking point or the main event, right, for this afternoon's discussion is the GRENLEC issue. But before we get into that, I've been asking our two other guests here if they can chime in on how do we get our diaspora to that place where they can play a more meaningful, cohesive, and concrete role in our local economy, like in rural development and so. What's your ideas on that?
Well, we have a colonial mentality. We believe that foreign and foreigners are the only way that we can develop our country. Over the years, there has been much talk about diaspora, but diaspora is simply used to send a barrel, to send money, in case of hurricane and natural disasters to run and so on, or when the politicians, the government, having any meetings, they use the diaspora to come in and hear what they have to say. Now, the diaspora is full of talent and resources, education, tourism, rural development, technology. I believe that if we make a serious attempt to get our locals or diaspora involved, I think Grenada could be developed very easily. But unfortunately, all we've been getting over the years is just lip service, huh? But we need to look at the way forward. And hold on 1 second. My brother. Yeah, we need to look at and have a serious plan as to how we engage with diaspora. We're looking at a lot of contracts I give now to foreigners. Contracts in terms of infrastructural development. And we have a whole set talented people, Grenadians, who can do that job. So the first thing we need to do is to recognize that diaspora is the 16th constituency. Okay? And what is so important that during election time, you see plain loads of people in the diaspora being enticed by this ruling party to come and put them in power. And once they're in power, that's it. They never consulted on the way forward for national development. They never consulted on issues like the GRENLEC issue, the airport authority, the development of the airport, development of Mount Hartman, development in Liberia. None whatsoever. We have talented people and people with resources that can play a significant role in the development of our country. So the first thing that we need to do is to recognize that there are more Grenadians living outside of Grenada than those at home. And we have to enlist them. We have to find them where they are. We have to entice them. We have to give them incentives to come home and be part of nation building. They are Grenadians. I mean, when I look at how shabby this government treating the diaspora, I look at the COVID thing. When they are now saying to Grenadians outside of Grenada that you need a visa to come into your homeland. I mean that in itself is so embarrassing. The government, this new National Party government, have disenfranchised thousands of Grenadians. There are Grenadians in the diaspora who are willing, who want to come home. You have to apply to the Ministry of Health for a visa. You have to wait for approval. And those who are overseas, those students or those on vacations and those who are just maybe for medical treatment and they want to come home, some of them cannot meet the conditions under which to obtain this visa. When you go to the airport, JFK and Atlanta and Miami airport, and you see Grenadians there, some of them with tears in their eyes, they're crying because they want to come home, and the government have made it so difficult for them to come to the land where they live, the string there. So we have to look at the diaspora in a whole new way. It's not just people that come in for carnival, and you look at the carnival. If you take away the diaspora support from the carnival, there's no carnival. Our diaspora, they spend more money they pump more money into the local economy than the so-called fly-by-night investors. And look at what they do. They come in, they build homes, they send money for the family. They don't get the incentives as the foreigners do. You have people coming here on a CBI program. They allow them to sell our passports. They allow them to bring in all that they want into the country, no tax. Could you imagine? You are giving a foreigner your passport to sell. He sells the passport, and whatever money that is collected from that seal, he gives the government a percentage, small percentage, and he keeps the whole half. And he's allowed to come to Grenada and purchase the best lands in Grenada that Grenadians themselves cannot afford. Lansapine, West Half Point, Fort Judy. The local man can't do it. But we allow, not diaspora. There's not one Grenadian in the diaspora that is a citizen by investment program agent. None of them whatsoever. None of them is any trade ambassador, even though they would be better trade ambassadors than these foreigners. So we see total disrespect to our diaspora, and we need a government that will change that and change that immediately. Okay? So I am willing to lend myself in working and doing whatever it takes to elect a government that will respect the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Pichimatec, wherever they are. And that is what we need to do, my brother. So we can talk all we want until we have a government who understands the importance of Grenadians overseas and the contribution that they have made and the contribution that they cannot just talk about. We have to have plans in place. And that is the way to go.
Okay, well. Brother Baptiste, I am really looking forward to us, developing something that is going to be transformational for the people in the rural communities, and so having the diaspora involved in a meaningful way.
Let me just...
Yeah.
The diaspora pump more money into the rural economy than the CBI investors.
Yes, I know the remittances, we want to get past that.
No, remittances, whenever they visit, they go to rural Grenada, and they buy from the small shop, they buy from the vendor. So their money circulate in the hands of the ordinary man, the small man. The CBI investors, it goes in a little click, in the 1%, 2%. And then it heads right back out. Not so with the diaspora dollar. You have anti this, anti that, Kosu this, Lenin, Foreign, and I have to drop a little something there for them. And they come and they stay among us. And they be part of us, they eat with food, they buy with fish, they take back with herbs, they go all around.
Okay.
I just cannot understand why is it that this government is treating Grenadians overseas the way they do. And we have to work on that, my brother. We need to change that, and we need to change it quick. When you get to the airport, Grenadians coming home, just the customs alone, you see how they mishandle, mistreat, and disrespect Grenadians at the airport, digging up in the suitcase, throwing their stuff all over the place. The white people coming in, and they go through, have a nice day, sir. And that's it. Not so with Grenadians. Grenadians have coming. And I can tell you because I firsthand the way they treat us, the way they treat them at the airport.
Yes,
you bring a little thing for you, a little old shoe you bring for your friend or your auntie or grandmother, and they want to know how much you pay for that. And this
Brother Baptiste, I really get the point that you're referring to, because I saw just recently when certain issues came up and we had members, family relationship and so out there making certain observations and commenting on things that's happening locally. The response from some of our own people have been, oh, you don't live here. All you living out there and all you're just talking and so on. The same people that send the money for which Brother Terry was saying that we line up to go collect at MoneyGram and Western Union, the same people that send these monies, we turn around and when they make certain observations, we say, well, all you don't live in here and all you live in out there, so whatever and whatever. So we really do need to get past that. But I want to get Brother Terry Noel to come in here on because we're coming down well past 3 o'clock, and he says that he has to leave at a particular time. So before I get to you gentlemen, Brother Stephen and Mr. Michael Baptiste, I'm expecting you all to remain with me. I want to get Senator Noel's take on the GRENLEC issue. That controversy that we see that the government have been making some comments, and officially they say that they didn't have a problem with the sale of GRENLEC when it took place. The concerns were with the nature of the deal that was made, and that's the concern that they've had. There are many questions that are out there. We see the responses that have been forthcoming. So what's your take on it, Senator Noel?
Well, first thing at the high level of secrecy and so on, no real transparency, and how this whole thing unfolded was a serious concern from the get-go. Is as though the government have something to hide. And the truth about it is that is not the first time that the government have behaved in such a manner. Apparently, this government, the Union National Party, is consistent with them and that kind of approach. Because remember, the oil and gas issue was a similar issue. When we learned about it, the exploration through a newspaper in Trinidad and Tobago. I can't remember, I didn't have the opportunity to look back at it, but I know I do have some of the evidence there. I don't have it in front of me now, but that's how it unfolded. So, and again, the timing, again, reasons for concern. The fact that people, at the time, people were shopping for Christmas Eve, and then all of a sudden, these things unfold. And there was nothing mentioned in the budget, being part of the budget, analyze the budget and so on, and do my budget presentation in the Senate. And there was nothing to the effect which concerns anything about the repurchasing of the shares. And now we're learning that it appears though this may cost as much as $300 million when we look at the whole thing, because we're talking about $57 million where the company WRB would have taken a loan to pay dividends and so on. And now I think they own somewhere around like $40 million, which the government probably would inherit this debt to have to pay. Where they've been paying, and WRB already been paying something like $300 and I think around $30,000 per month on that. And then we have to take into effect things of the legal fees. The government would have spent a whole set of money against in the tribunal and so on against the WRB, which probably in excess to over $30 million. Again, we hear they talking about load shedding as though they're trying to prepare you for what is to come, so which means we might be thinking about the engine and so on, maybe outdated or exhausted, and to purchase these machines, which we in Grenada, I don't know who they would set up to have the connection to negotiate to buy these machines again is another thing, and it's going to be costly. I think these things will cost in the millions, as well as I think the opposition leader did mention about the poles and so on as well. Going around, we see a lot of the poles painted, I think orange, which means they've been changing. So all these things, including more that probably we don't know about, it appears though that the total cost of it is exorbitant. And all of a sudden we're hearing that they have this money. They're talking about capital projects and so on, where they save money from this other budget and so on, making excuses and so on, which they had this money somewhere. And all of a sudden now this money just come up. So it is serious reasons for concern for Grenadians and going forward and so on, and the way the government continue to do its business in secrecy. That's my thing.
Okay. Brother John, there's a clip that I want you to line up for me before I get to Brother Baptiste. But Dr. Fletcher, if you may come in here, what's your view? I expect that you would have been following the developments. What's your take on it? What have you concluded?
Archie, let me say this, Pablo, that our discussion this evening on this matter will exchange a lot of information. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, most of the information that we need to know, mm-hmm. as Brother Terry has pointed out, mm-hmm. is shrouded in secrecy, and it's not out to the public. So we are discussing this issue in the context in which a lot of the details that we need to have, mm-hmm. that we need to know, is still shrouded. But we know some things, because press conferences have been held and so forth. So okay. That is out there. But let me lay this foundation, Pablo, that the issue for me, and we need to make very clear, that the issue is not about a support for WRB versus government of Grenada or mm-hmm. any of those narrow confines. Mm-hmm. The debate is taking place in the context of a strategic and national security sector, a subsector, for which the Grenadian people ought to be concerned about and ought to be informed about and ought to be knowledgeable about. It's an issue, it is our issue, right? So we ought to be informed on it. And so far, there's an information deficit. There's a gap out there that exists in the public space on this matter. And I'm hoping that more information will be made available from the government side to inform the public on exactly what is the specific nature of the deal. But let me hasten to add the following. One, the GRENLEC matter and the government acquisition of the shares must not be surprising to us for a number of reasons. One is that in the share purchase agreement of 1994, there is a clause in there that triggers off the buyback by government. It's provided for. Secondly, we must also establish the fact that government has a right to initiate actions to acquire assets, or to purchase first and foremost, assets of the state in which it is deemed to be, in my humble opinion, bottom line, highlighted, bold-faced, that it must be in the interest of the people, and it must be in the interest of the state of Grenada.
We're having some technical difficulties, brother and Dr.
Fletcher.
Dr. Fletcher. In the interim, while Dr. Fletcher sorts out himself on the other side, our technical operator is supposed to have a recording lined up there to play, a recording that I call Corder. So if you can play Corder for us, and we'll continue the conversation thereafter.
Okay, hold on a second. Quarter. Okay.
It is with a sense of outrage as I listen to the lies and the misleading statements that's been pushed down
lift the volume a bit, please,
of the Grenadian
Brother
people on this GRENLEC issue. The government is telling the Grenadian people that this was a sale, that they repurchased the shares. That in itself is a total lie. The government went to Parliament, passed a law demanding GRENLEC to give them 5% of their pre-tax profit. GRENLEC refused to do so. WRB refused to comply with that law. They took the matter to the court. The court came down with a heavy hammer against the people of Grenada. They awarded WRB $65 million US. WRB lawyers, $8.9 million. And of course, the government lawyers would have to, the government will have to pay their lawyers an equal amount. So we're looking at 50 million EC dollars, approximately, that was spent by this government before the courts. The courts hammered Grenada, and this case had serious implications because it meant that had the government succeed in this case against the tribunal, SGU would be in danger, Kenco would be in danger, Digicel would be in danger, Flow would be in danger. This is never a sale. What the government did was to satisfy a court judgment. WRB lawyers gave the government an ultimatum. They gave them December 31st, 2020 to pay that money. WRB lawyers was about to hold the Minister of Finance, Dr. Mitchell, in contempt of court. And here's what he did. He ran out of the building as if the building was on fire. And he passed it on to Gregory Bowen, because he recognized that once he stepped foot on the United States territory, that judgment was going to be enforced. How could we swallow what the government is telling you and saying it's a sale when they have yet to show us a repurchase agreement. The government poisoned the atmosphere, so there were no negotiations. A sale, my fellow Grenadians, is an agreement between two parties. Look at the release WRB put out. It says a settlement agreement. The word settlement agreement here, those two words are pregnant. It substitutes the words by the order of the court. This is not a sale. How could we have a sale when we have how could it be a repurchase agreement when the government have yet to show a repurchase agreement? There were no room for negotiations. The entire Caribbean was watching this case because it meant that had this government succeeded in what they were trying to do to WRB, it would affect governments in the region. The United States of America, they were looking at this case. Of course, their citizen, one of their citizens, was mistreated in Grenada.
So, Mr. Baptiste.
Yes, my brother.
Ex-opposition leader, ex-member of parliament.
Former, okay.
Yes, former member of parliament, former opposition leader.
Right.
The man who more or less always, I can't remember the last time I saw you dressed in anything else but white. Always dressed in white. Is that significant?
It is a tribute and respect to the late great Sir Eric Gary.
I kind of imagine was something to do with that.
Introduced me to the nation. That's why.
I thought so.
I just wanted to hear you say.
I thought so. Yeah.
So you said quite a bit in that clip that I played there. It's an interview that you did, and I took a couple bits and pieces, so here and there, from the interview and put that clip together to make a particular, to demonstrate the point that you've been making. Can you elaborate? Do you care to elaborate a bit more on some of the things that you said in that clip?
Before I go into elaborating, a ground and GRENLEC. In 1985, after the intervention of the United States, of the military intervention, President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, came here, and he stood up next to Tillman Thomas, Vincent St. Louis, Dr. Mitchell, Herbert Blaise, and he said to them, ask me for what you want. That was one of the things that they asked for. So we came up with a rural electrification program. The United States government sponsored that. And they gave money for brand new generators and standby generators. Dr. Mitchell was the line minister. Gregory Bowen was the manager of GRENLEC. They bought second-hand generator from England for, I think it was 2-point-something million pounds from some fly-by-night operator. The generators was obsolete. You could not find parts for them. Within 2 years, the whole of Grenada was in blackout and load shedding. Businesses suffered. They had to run and buy standby generators. People, electronic and refrigerators was been damaged, and so on. And so it was on corruption, that the campaign on corruption in 1990, corruption against the one Dr. Stone. The people of Grenada heard it, they agreed with it, and they elected the National Democratic Congress. When they came into power, the problem continued. The new government just could not deal with the situation of the blackouts and the load shedding and the damage to people, electronic and electrical equipment and whatnot. They did what was transparent. They put up worldwide bidding for the services for the generation and supply of electricity to our trial and state. several reputable companies put in a bid, and they settled on WRB, not because they were the highest bidder. They were not the highest bidder, but because of their reputation. And from 1993 up till now, Grenada had experienced a reliable supply of electricity, uninterrupted supply of electricity. And we could give that to them. Now, while we may not agree totally with the quantum as to what it was sold for, at the time, the government was a motivated itself. GRENLEC did not even have a good step ladder that can afford. The checks were bouncing, could not pay the employees. So whatever they get at the time, we were satisfied with that, because we did not have, in other words, there was not much equity in GRENLEC at the time.
It's like you're selling an old car.
You're selling an old car. So they came in and they did what they have to do. When the NNP came into office in 1995, they made all sorts of noise of sale of GRENLEC and the thing, and they're going to take it back and all of that. They hired the firm of Williams. I think it's a firm headed by the former the governor, Danny Williams.
Mm-hmm.
They examined the sale of GRENLEC, and they examined it thoroughly. And the only thing that they found, the only thing that this new National Party government found that was wrong with the deal, in the currency exchange, GRENLEC gave 252 or 258 for the US dollar.
Okay.
And they thought that it was not adequate, there was an error there. So GRENLEC agreed that they will give the difference between the 252 and the 268 as what the rates are.
Okay.
GRENLEC made out a check to the government of Grenada for that. As a matter of fact, the lawyers that the government hired got more monies than the few dollars that GRENLEC gave them for the difference in the currency exchange. And we move from there. So we are at this stage now. The government went to Parliament, and they introduced a law in Parliament, what you could call a loan sharking law, because that's how loan sharks do. Loan sharks just don't legislate. The loan shark will send two gunmen and tell you, you got to give me this out of your business in order to operate. Because they said that GRENLEC must give them 5% of the operating costs, of the profit, of the pre-tax profit. GRENLEC said no. As a matter of fact, in a nasty exchange between the Prime Minister and the WRB representative, they reminded Dr. Mitchell that 19 American soldiers died here in 1983 to restore democratic rule to Grenada. And they were not going to be bullied by this kind of a communistic approach that he was trying to push down their throat there. So they went to the courts. The courts came down with a heavy, heavy hammer against Grenada. And you know, sometimes I'm a little angry too at the opposition politicians, because they keep talking about repurchase. They keep talking about government buyback shares. Have the government laid on the table like the National Democratic Congress did when they sold the shares to GRENLEC? Have the government laid on the table for everyone to see a repurchase agreement between WRB now and this government of Grenada? No, they have not, because there is none. The court came down with a heavy hammer, and the court sent a strong message, not just to Grenada, but the rest of the Caribbean. And moreover, they were telling Grenada, you see SGU, don't try that with them. Okay? Kenco, Digicel, Flow, and all these foreign-based companies, they was on edge. Had this government succeed in what they were trying to do to WRB, they say, well, you come for WRB, we didn't say nothing, so when you come for us, there will be nobody left to say anything for us. So the government had no choice. WRB lawyers were prepared to hold Dr. Mitchell in contempt of court. The law says that you can hold the Minister of Finance in contempt if he fails to satisfy a court judgment. Are we there?
I'm right here.
Are we there?
I'm right here.
Yeah.
I'm right here. I'm right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Grenadian law is quite clear. It says you can hold the Minister of Finance in contempt of court if he fails to satisfy a judgment of the court. That's what the law said. Dr. Mitchell recognizing what it is. WRB lawyers already did all the searches, and they identify all Dr. Mitchell hidden properties overseas. And they were ready to first lien them, L-E-I-N, lien them, and then when he stepped foot on the U.S. territory, to go to the federal court and hold him in contempt of court. He recognized that. And what he did? He ran out of the Ministry of Finance. He ran out of the Ministry of Finance and he handed Ministry of Finance to Gregory Bowen. Now, he recognized that Bowen don't have as much overseas holding as he do, so let Bowen be the Minister of Finance. And therefore, Bowen would be held in contempt until Grenada could satisfy the judgment. Early December, the government went back to Parliament and they borrowed 350 million EC dollars, and they said that was for budgetary support. Now, I want to say to this opposition politician, anytime government borrows money from anybody, and the money gets into the consolidated fund, there's no law that prevents the minister from spending money how he sees fit. So don't ask the government where they get the money from. The government borrowed the money was in the consolidated fund, and they satisfied a court judgment, a court order. Those of you fellow Grenadians who have bought properties and who have done transactions, when you do a transaction, you see this agreement between Mary Jane and Tom Jones.
So before you go ahead, Brother Michael, do we know, is there any evidence?
Hold on 1 second. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yes, my brother.
Yes. Do we know, you said that they went and they borrowed $350 million, which went into the consolidated fund. Do we know, is there any information indicating the source of that money, who the contributors are, who the people that we borrow the money from?
Well, here's how it works. When you need to borrow money, whether it's a special warrant, whether it's a loan, the three branches of government, the judiciary, parliament, the executive.
Yeah.
The executive will go to the parliament and ask the parliament for permission to borrow money.
Okay.
They would justify why, they would give some vague details as to where they will borrow the money. Maybe they tell you commercial banks, maybe they tell you international banks, maybe they tell you local banks. I have not seen the wording of the request, but I'm sure in that wording it will say international banks, it will say foreign banks, or it will say give the Minister of Finance permission to borrow money, to borrow $350 million. Whether it is a drug dealer, or whatever, it will say to give him permission to do so. So he's in line with that. He meets the requirements of the law. Now, once it passes the lower house, it passes the Senate, the governor signed it, he now has permission to borrow. And that is what banks would require. authority from government so they can hold the state, so that when one government leave office, you can say, is this government? So they had permission to borrow the monies, regardless of where they get it from, who they get it from. It was a legal, in other words, it was a legal borrowing,
Yes,
parliament
yes,
approval.
Yes, yes.
So once the money reaches the consolidated fund, that money could be spent however the government sees fit.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a legal transaction that is binding on the country, and so, but we do not know who the creditors are.
Well, we may not know who all the creditors are now, because we may have given him, he may have had a blanket approval. He has 15.
Yeah. I understand. I just want to clarify that we do not know. Essentially, we do not know who the creditors are.
Sometimes you don't know, but in other words, he will say, give the Minister of Finance permission.
Yes, to borrow. But as it stands now, the government got the authorization from Parliament to borrow. But we do not, essentially, at this point in time, we do not know who the creditors are.
No, we may not. I don't know.
Right, okay.
To be quite honest with you, it's so interesting. Whether it's the Bank of China, whether it's some loan shark, what is important to me is that our national debt went up $350 million. But that is not all.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
That's not all.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, you hear Dr. Mitchell and this acolyte from St. David's, Joseph, talking about a deal for Grenada. And you hear Bowen talking about additional shares. And I want to ask Mr. Bowen, and I ask him, Mr. Bowen, again, where does additional shares came from? If the people of Grenada are the minority shareholders, WRB are the major shareholders, the 11 shares that you said you get, was it shares from people who died and they did not have any beneficiaries, and therefore WRB was just the recipient? In other words, they were holding the shares because no one come forward in so many years. They may have seen the death certificate where these people may have passed and left no beneficiaries. So they were the custodian of these 11 shares. So when they're selling their majority, they had to pass that along. Because he talked about 11 shares. But let's keep moving with that. Now, look at what it costs us in this GRENLEC court matter. $65 million US for GRENLEC. Punitive damages, $8.9 million US. GRENLEC lawyers plus court costs. The government attorneys would be getting the same amount. So when you do the maths and you add legal fees between the government attorneys and WRB attorneys, that is close to 50 million EC dollars, my brother. When you do the maths with the 65 million WRB is getting, you would see that we forked out.
55 million US, right?
Yes, US. You see that we forked out almost 270 million dollars, EC dollars, for second-hand generators. So we again bought used generators for that kind of money. And we bought it for that kind of money because the government had poisoned the atmosphere. WRB would not even accept a phone call from Gregory Bowen or the Prime Minister. They say, I'll see you in the court. And they see them in the court. And what was important here? This court was set up primarily to deal with people like Dr. Mitchell. Now, you know, from 1950 plus, United States government have an embargo against Cuba. It's not because Cuba is communist. They readily normalize with North Korea. They are buddy-buddy with Russia. They are buddy-buddy with China. So it is not because Cuba is communist. The embargo against Cuba is for a similar particular nature of what Grenada was trying to do. When Castro took over Cuba, he nationalized a lot of American assets. This very said court gave a judgment of billions. We don't know if it's 10 billion US or rising. And they said until Cuba satisfied that judgment of that court, whether Republicans or Democrats, they are not normalizing relation with Cuba. Not because Cuba is communist. It has nothing to do with that. So when this matter came up with Grenada, the courts made sure that they used Grenada as an example to send a strong message to the other Caribbean islands. Do not interfere with capitalism. Do not interfere with American interests. So I am saying to the opposition politicians, stop allowing the government to lead you into the narrative that they buy back shares. Have you ever heard about anyone, any buyer will be held in contempt of court if he didn't buy? Have you ever heard about that? How? There's lawyers in the opposition side. Where on earth have you ever heard a buyer and a seller? The buyer wants to buy, and he said he's not buying, or the seller giving you an ultimatum, you pay me by 31st, or I will hold you in contempt of court. Does that sound like a sale to you, my brother? I don't know, I'm asking you. Does that sound like a sale?
I get the point that you make.
So how could they join the government in talking about repurchase? There's no repurchase.
Okay.
And there's nothing fishy about what the government did. The only thing that they do, they put in a North Korea on you with the information.
Right.
They, in other words, what you say, they massaging the information they're giving you.
Okay.
There's nothing fishy about that. They went to the courts. The courts came down with a heavy hammer. The government lost the case. The government awarded punitive damages to WRB lawyers, court costs, government lawyers. What is so fishy about that? It's quite clear. What they're trying to do, they're massaging the information, and they're trying to do damage control, and your opposition is helping them to do the control by talking about repurchase. Let's talk about judgment, my brothers.
And it's created a heavy debt burden on the country.
Exactly.
With the amount of legal fees and so that we have to pay.
And you know what is so interesting? And ridiculous at the same time? At this particular time.
At this point in time, yeah. Yes, I know. When we could ill afford it, yes, I know.
Tumbling to resurrect the economy as a result of the damage that was brought along with COVID. Because you know, COVID is not just a pandemic, it brought along economic challenges. You've seen in the they are talking about stimulus. They give one stimulus, they give second stimulus, and they may give a third stimulus. So countries are now scrambling to resurrect the dying economies because it is predicted that we will see some global recession very soon. And here we have millions in debt in loans for airport. Millions in debt again to satisfy a judgment to keep Gregory Bowen or Dr. Mitchell from being held in contempt of court. And Dr. Mitchell knows fully well.
Okay.
Dr. Mitchell knows fully well that WRB lawyers identified the companies that he registered his property for in Dover, Delaware. They identified the companies which Dr. Mitchell has registered his real estate under in Dover, Delaware. Because you know Delaware is a secret, there's some secrecy in the laws where you can register a company and you can be anonymous and register a company there. But they have some forensic auditors. And they found them. And they were ready to function.
There's some other elements to this whole conversation that I want to bring in. I see we had lost Dr. Fletcher. I saw he was back We seem to have lost him again. Brother John, he's not there, is he? In the interim, Brother John, I expect you have that clip line up there for me, the one that I call renewable energy policy audio. If you can play this one for us, so that we can continue with that conversation.
One of the main reasons given today for government breaking that arrangement with WRB is that over the years, WRB has failed rather, to pursue renewable and alternative sources of energy. Now, this points directly to a serious crisis and even lack of leadership on the part of the NNP whenever they were in government since the signing of the agreement. Because we had the signing of the agreement, we had the coming into force of the agreement in 1998. NNP remained in office up until 2008 and made no progress in terms of establishing a clear policy towards attaining renewable sources of energy or taking Grenada in that direction. Because as far as the NDC is concerned, it is not the responsibility of GRENLEC, a private company, to direct and to take the country in a particular direction, in this case, towards renewable sources of energy. No effort was made, and that was found by the tribunal. No effort or no serious effort was made by the NNP administration, once in office, to adopt policy and to enact laws that will see Grenada going in the direction of the renewable sources of energy. Now, the NDC, we have no objection whatsoever, and in fact we encourage that this is the direction that should be pursued. When the NDC came into office in 2008, it immediately set about establishing policies that would take Grenada away from reliance on fossil fuel and towards a cleaner energy supply and source. And all of that was done without friction and without acrimony towards GRENLEC. And in that whole engagement, there was absolutely at no time any threat of GRENLEC demanding a repurchase of the shares because they saw anything that the NDC administration did or was about to do being a breach of the contract. So this here, you should be seeing it on your screen now, is the National Energy Policy of Grenada, established in November 2011 by the administration then. That is the administration headed by Mr. Tillman Thomas. And you see here the objective of it was a low carbon development strategy for Grenada, Carriacou, and and this energy policy was developed with the full participation, and part of the objective of this energy policy was to have by 2020 at least 20% of the electricity in Grenada coming from renewable sources. And to do that, a policy and legislative framework was established. In fact, I will share with members of the public that by the time the NDC lost the elections in 2013, not only was this policy already in implementation, in that there was resident in Grenada a Grenadian geologist, a specialist, Dr. Raymond Nurse, based in Germany. He was in Grenada for 2 years by then, working in concert with government and WRB to explore the possibility of geothermal energy in Grenada, pursuant to this policy. There was already another company set up that was interested or pursuing generating electricity by wind. There was a contract between the government of Grenada and River and Twine Estates. There was a contract between the government of Grenada and another entity for generation of electricity by a wind farm in Carriacou. So the point I am making, and all of this was done with no threat from GRENLEC of arbitration, or no allegation by GRENLEC that government was breaching the share purchase agreement that would trigger a repurchase event, and legislation was about to be passed. When the government changed in February 2013, everything was shelved, and the government went back. So this energy policy was never acted upon or further developed. If it had been followed through with the work that was already done, there would have been 20% of our electricity would have been generated by renewable means already, because the goal was by 2020, and the government then was well on the way. Under that new arrangement, other entities were going to be able to generate their own electricity using renewable sources. That was the agreement reached in principle between GRENLEC and government of Grenada by the end of 2012. So my brothers and sisters, my friends, the point I am making is that the difference in leadership is stark. One of cooperation and respect, the other, you're talking acrimony and aggression. And that is why we are where we are today. We would have been the impression this government is given that they needed to break from the share, breach the agreement, put us in debt to the extent of $200 million in order for us to pursue renewable sources of energy and to diversify the energy sector is just a plain lie.
So, essentially, as the point was made earlier, Brother Baptiste, you did indicate when the conversation first started, you took us back to 1984. You took us through the whole process of the NDC coming into office in 1990, what they met, the deal that was gotten into WRB. I deliberately played that bit here because of the conversation that's been taking place and what's been coming from government. Because the claim from government is that WRB have not been receptive to the whole issue of renewable energies, and that no one else could get into the sector, and they needed to go the direction that the market, because in the same way that liberalizing the telecommunication market brought lower prices, okay, brought lower costs to customers, in the same way liberalizing the market is going to bring lower costs for energy to consumers. And so, can you speak to that? What was the situation in terms of the agreement? We have that claim here from Claudette Joseph, who is the Public Relations Officer of the National Democratic Congress, and we have the claims that have been made by the ruling administration and the whole issue of liberalization of the market. If you can unmute your mic and join in on the conversation, because your mic is muted presently. Can you please unmute? Right, we got you.
You know?
Yes, Got you.
Well, I heard the clip. I know the issue at hand is about the court matter, what the government settled, the judgment that the government settled with WRB. I heard she was talking a lot about policies in 2008 and 2013 with renewable energies and wind farm and all that. That's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand right now, that the people of Grenada are being told that government repurchase GRENLEC shares, which is just not so. We will get
yes, but Mike, we have been through that.
Right,
What I'm saying to you is that in addition to that, the government have also been saying that they needed to do what they did because WRB have not been, and that response there, this clip there was taken in a conversation that was taking place where both the representative of government and the public relations officer of the NDC, they were both participating in a conversation. And the claim was made that that was part based on the agreement that existed. It did not allow for the government to get into renewables, and it also did not allow for other participants to get into the business, and the whole issue of the impact that liberalizing the market is going to have on the cost of electricity. Because what they're saying is that the cost of electricity is inhibiting growth in the economy. It's inhibiting investors from participating at the level that they would like to because of the high cost of electricity. So that is the point, the issue that I want you to speak to.
Let me address that.
Yes, please.
The matter before the courts had nothing to do with liberalization. I don't know if those of us that was not living in a cave understood. The matter before the court dealt specifically with government trying to pass a law demanding 5% of GRENLEC pre-tax profit.
Okay.
That was what we got the matter in the courts.
Yeah, well, you've addressed that.
Hold. The case had nothing to do with WRB failure to allow liberalization or to allow for renewable energy or wind farm energy. That has nothing to do with this matter. What is at hand here is that government introduced a law demanding GRENLEC give them part of the profit. What is at hand here? The government have created an unhealthy working environment for a legitimate investor went to international court and sought justice there.
Yeah, you've said all of that already.
Right. Let's look at what they're talking about. The cost of electricity is too high.
Yeah.
My brother, 15% VAT, 10% environmental levy, fuel surcharge. Take off the taxes and the people will breathe. What we talking? What nonsense is he talking about? How could you introduce a 15% VAT, a 10% environmental levy? That's the garbage collection. Dr. Mitchell said, no, the cost of electricity in Grenada is so high and it's preventing investors, it's choking consumers. And you put on a 15% VAT, and you find that's the only place on something that's already choking. So you see nothing wrong with introducing a 10% environmental levy because you know electricity is crucial to the lives of Grenadians and they must pay the bill. So you must get that 10% every month to give your partisan contractors to pick up garbage. Let's get one thing clear. If you remove the 15% VAT, the 10% environmental levy, and you do away with surcharge as the NDC was doing, and you know I'm not here speaking on NDC behalf, but sometimes they do a very poor job in defending themselves. NDC was given GRENLEC allowing no surcharge, so GRENLEC was allowed to pass it on. the new national party of Dr. Mitchell, the man that's talking on both sides of his mouth, saying how electricity bills are so high. He introduced the 10% environmental levy. He introduced 15% VAT. He introduced the fuel surcharge. So a good 40% of your bill has nothing to do with electric consumption. Other states don't have that. So if you want a comparative analysis of the cost of electricity in Grenada and the cost of electricity in St. Vincent, level the playing field, brother. Take up the VAT. St. Vincent and St. Lucia don't have VAT. Take up the environmental levy. Take off the fuel surcharge. And then you could say, I take off a 40%, the 40% tax that I have already, I've placed on GRENLEC. I took it off. And look at the comparative with St. Lucia. So it's utter nonsense. And when Dr. Mitchell and Gregory Bowen start talking this nonsense, that is why I said we must speak with one strong voice. And we must tell him to stop it. We must tell him that if he's of the opinion that electricity bills are so high, for heaven's sake, immediately remove the VAT. And not only that, I have some technical advice for him too. Now that Grenada is in control of the electricity company once more, I have some advice for him. Transformers are a source of increased energy. Every household in Grenada have a transformer. Transformers over the years have also been the source of electric fires, because people purchase transformers based on what they can afford, and it does not necessarily use for the purpose of which it was intended. So, if we had sat with GRENLEC and say GRENLEC as an American company, most of our returning nationals are now, or most of our diaspora is in the United States and Canada. The voltage there is 110 to 20. All the appliances in Grenada, most of it is coming from the United States and Canada. And if you're talking about reducing the cost of electricity, you should have started GRENLEC and say, give us a dual voltage, upgrade the electric, upgrade on the grid, so that consumers could do away with the transformers. It would save the taxpayers billions of dollars. To save the country billions of dollars in importation of this inferior transformers, because most of them does not meet underwriters' laboratory, and therefore they hazard. And that's the reason why we have so much fires in the country. So again, he said Gregory Bowen is an engineer. He must know that transformers are what you call inductors, and they burn current. 15% VAT, 10% environmental levy, fuel surcharge. Take them off, and let's breathe. Let the country breathe. And you will see how immediately your bills will drop by 40%, my brother. Is that difficult to understand?
Well, that's the reason why I have people like you coming on the program, because I only ask the questions. I don't have the expertise, so I seek to bring people with the expertise, so that when the information is shared, the public can know that they're getting information that is authentic. You know.
How could Dr. Mitchell seriously look Grenadians in the eye and say, bills too high? You have the highest bills in the country, and yet you put 10% environmental levy on it, yet you put 10% back, yet you put fuel surcharge, so GRENLEC passing along the surcharge for us, and then you have the audacity to say your bills high? Whereas if you just take off all of that, you didn't have to go to court for that. Just immediately, you don't have to fight with GRENLEC, because GRENLEC is a tax collector. GRENLEC, fellow Grenadians, was not just the WRB was not just a reliable supply of electricity. It was not just a reliable supply of electricity. WRB was also used by government as a tax collector, because they figure the easiest way to wring that 10% environmental levy from the backs of the poor people in the country is to put it on electricity. Now I'm about to tell him, find somewhere else to put it. Take it off, take off the 10% environmental levy. Put it in tourism. Put it in some find somewhere, put it on the CBI, put it on in digital, put it up. Put some on cable and wireless, put some on Digicel, put some on Coca-Cola, put some on Carib. Split it up 10%. There's a lot of companies in the country that are making money. It was not just WRB. Split the environmental levy. Split it up among everybody and let the people breathe. And stop talking this nonsense about you're going to spend $300 million to buy second-hand generator from WRB again, because I know you're telling us you did so because electricity is too high, my brother. Fellow Grenadians, come on. Let's think a little bit. Let's not digest this type of dotishness. We build too high because government make it high.
Well, that's one of the reasons in the effort to dissuade our citizenry from digesting the stupidness. That's why we bring people like you to dissect it. You know, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
No, a lot is being made, as I said a while ago, a lot is being made about the whole issue of renewables. And the fact that given the deal that existed, and the conditions of the sale and so, that it was difficult or impossible, and it put WRB, GRENLEC, in a position where they were able to resist other players from getting into the market and the whole issue of renewables. How critical would you say this issue of renewables, are to the generation of energy in our context?
Well, first let me see. The people of Grenada just paid $50 million EC dollars to two corporate law firms. Almost $50 million EC dollars to two corporate firms to fight a case in Grenada. And government could not owe them. Because these guys are sharp. They wanted their money and they wanted it now. It's not like the Gemma Bain issue where you could go to court and I could flood the court. You flood the court in America, you'll be in an orange jumpsuit. Because they will go to the federal court and hold you in contempt, and he knows that. So he knows that very well. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah.
So renewable is something that we can do immediately. But you know what we could have done with $50 million EC dollars? We could have set up sub-generating plants in 6 parishes in Grenada, or 5 parishes in Grenada, to complement what we have in Queen's Park. So that in case of a natural disaster like we had with Ivan and Emily, we would not have to go through this thing, this constant blackout. We could have looked at an underground system that would protect us from hurricane and high winds and storms and so forth. We could have done all of that. All of that we could have done. In other words, we could have had a state-of-the-art electric system. We could have gone underground, have substations throughout Grenada, 5 parishes, including St. Andrews, and including St. George's. We could have invited the diaspora. So they too could have supplied a group of people could get together and have a substation and have a wind farm to complement that substation. And we could have done all of that through the diaspora. We have the technology, we have the know-how, we know it. We would have gone for an underground system. So in case of hurricane, we won't be that troubled. And we would have all our little plants. In other words, we would have what you call a consolidated electric company. You understand? So yes, wind, sun, we need to look at that. Because of course, both for our environmental issue and of course we need to do so as part of our national security, and in particular, our towns. We need to look at the supply of electricity in critical areas like St. George's, areas like Grenville, areas like Lansapine. We need to start doing an underground system, and we need to have substations in all of these areas, so we're not depending on one generating plant only, and then we can say we become energy sufficient and energy efficient, if we so choose. But of course, we need planners. We need people with the vision and the technical know-how. We have it. We have the Grenadians. I could identify on the top of my head, about 15 qualified Grenadians I know who are involved in electrical and generation of electricity. And they would have been happy to invest, and the Grenadian people would be happy to invest in a company like that. For example, St. Mark's. St. Mark's have his own generating plant. People from that area in the diaspora were happy to buy shares. And they sell to one company, they tie in on one grid, and they sell there. So we are no longer being held hostage to a foreign buyer. And we could now tell them, thanks for the assistance you gave us in billing us out. When Boeing and Dr. Mitchell brought the company in shambles and Grenada was in blackouts, thanks for your service, but this is our plan now. We're going to have consolidated electrical services, plants in different areas. You understand?
Okay.
Not too late. Not too late, but we must have a plan. Not too late, but we must have a plan. But for the moment, the first one we need to do is to upgrade the electrical service. Give us a 3-wire, Delta Y3 system, where you can have a 110, 220. We could do away with the millions of dollars in the transformer, and we're doing ourselves a favor because it now becomes fire hazard every Mondays and Wednesdays. And by the way, a guy bringing up an old truck from New York, and they're waving flag, and they're doing all kind of stuff with him as if he's a savior. And I want to say to Dr. Mitchell and the prospective candidate in the Northeast for the NLP, I want to say to him, fire trucks don't prevent fire. Fire safety does. And that's one of the things that we need to do. Look on our electrical supply, look on the source, and see how we could manage that properly. And then we could move forward.
I want to play a clip that I intended to play. I'm not going to play the entire thing, but I just want to share with the listeners the kind of comments that we're getting. I mean, some of which has been already debunked by your conversation, but I want our listeners to hear, in case they've missed it, some of the comments that's been made by spokespersons of our administration on that issue. So if Brother John can play that first part of that clip that is labeled, what is labeled again, Brother John?
Finalized deal? Finalized deal?
Yes, yes, okay. Finalized deal.
All right,
great. We play that first part with Minister Joseph, Oliver Joseph.
All right, coming up.
We are here because of a personal vendetta held by Gregory Bo.
That's not the one? You want to finalize deal?
Is that it?
That's what you want to have, finalize deal? And you have renewable energy, you have good citizens, you have teachers, reality check.
And that is the first part. Well, sorry then. I seem to have sent the wrong one. But Mr. Baptiste, now that we are at this juncture, government is now in full control of GRENLEC once again. We hear talk about them speaking with the World Bank to get a top-class management entity in place for GRENLEC and so on. What is your response to that, and what do you expect
Well,
you know, for us going forward in terms of energy generation and so on?
I would say to Dr. Mitchell, you don't need to go to the World Bank. Maybe you may get a good management company, someone to manage. But in terms of electrical generation, supply of reliable electricity, that's a technical issue. I'm not so sure the World Bank would be the right place to look for that. You have to look at people who have hands-on experience and a proven record of accomplishment over the years. You see, one of the things that we must give the NDC credit for, and again, let me hasten to say I'm not a member of the NDC. In the 1990 period, after we suffered that debacle with Dr. Mitchell and Gregory, they put out bidding, they put out tendering notices, inviting people with experience. They didn't go to the World Bank. WRB was one of those people that came. And as I said, whether they got value for money at the time, and I think at the time they were motivated sellers, but they got someone that was qualified and experienced in distribution, supply of electric services. That's what they got. And they must take credit for that. They must take a bow. And they got that. Now he's talking about going to the World Bank. The World Bank may give you someone to manage, with accounting firm, a good manager. But supply of electricity is at a different field altogether. And we have to look at your record of accomplishment, your track record. Now, look at the situation in Grenada. We have marketing board that was created by the PRG. Through Dr. Mitchell, he said they lost their way. In his own words, you heard it. Marketing board lost their way. Whereas I think it's he lost his way. Marketing board lost their way. We had commercial fisheries. Again, that was created by the PRG. Marketing board was created by the PRG because of an abundance of agricultural products that we had in Grenada, and they created that so as to allow marketing board to market farmers' price. That was the purpose at the time. Commercial fisheries was created because of the bycatch. So allow fishermen in rural Grenada to sell the bycatch to commercial fisheries. They will process it, market it, so that fishermen don't have to be fish vendor. A fisherman could just go out to sea, he catch the fish, he come ashore. Commercial fisheries buy the bycatch, they export the exportable one, the tuna, the marlin and other things, and the bycatch, they process it and use it locally. What happened to marketing board in shambles? Commercial fisheries. Dr. Mitchell gave it to a Bajan, a white Bajan, took it away from the fishermen. Couldn't find one fisherman association in Grenada to put commercial fisheries in the buildings and the assets. You turn it over to them. Look at gravel and concrete. Look at the state of gravel and concrete. Government had 5 estates. Government did not see the need to even set up model farms and give small plots to people in impoverished area so that can become, agriculture can become part of the subsistence allowance to help them meet the challenging times. What happened to this estate? Can't manage, none of that. So all of these things, we had Cocoa Nutmeg Association, he's trying to take that now. The Banana Society, 1998, when the farmers run into difficulties with the millibug and with Deco, and they could not ship bananas because of poor quality. What did Dr. Mitchell do? Take over the association, and look at how he managed it. He managed it well. He sold all the farmers' assets to supporters of the new National Party. Banana farmers today have not received not a black penny. Not 1 penny have the banana farmers received as a result of Dr. Mitchell managing the Grenada Banana Cooperative Society. So, what is his track record? Look at the PTS, Public Transport Service. PRG left us with that, on the Dr. Mitchell. That crash, Central Garage. That crash.
Do you think, given the government's recent proposals with regards merging the two commodity boards, GCNA and the GCA, essentially getting rid of GCNA and getting rid of GCA and creating one entity, do you think that they could have suffered the same fate as the Banana Society in terms of the assets that they now have?
Well, you see, he talked about GCNA. Now, liberalization does not favor the seller. Okay? Liberalization favors the buyer. We are the seller. We were number 2, along with Indonesia in nutmeg production. We fell now to number 10. Guatemala have now taken over the number 2 spot. So part of the reason why farmers are struggling, the GCNA is struggling, is because of loss of production. After Ivan and Emily, this government made no serious effort to replant. Dr. Mitchell's sole purpose of wanting to interfere with GCNA was not because he liked GCNA, it's because he wanted to remove the monopoly that GCNA have on the exporting of nutmegs. Check around companies that went to GCNA for license to export nutmeg. And look at the agreements where they had to give GCNA a percentage. Check if any of these agents for these companies that wanted to export nutmeg. Check to see if Dr. Mitchell is related to any of them. Check. And we're going to have another program on that. How could you point your guns at GCNA because a member of your family went to GCNA and asked for a license to export nutmeg? And they were having difficulties? Or they were some member of your family acted as agent for an exporting company to export nutmegs? They took nutmeg from the poor farmers and the farmers never got paid? So you're saying now that I'm the Prime Minister and my son should not have to go to anybody and ask for a license to export nothing. I'm going to dissolve the GCNA and I'm going to put it in the hands of a minister. So the next time my son or my friend or my cousin, just like the call center, need to export, they don't have to go to GCNA again and the public don't have to know. Come on now. You see, I have a lot of issues with the way how we handle as opposition politicians. I have a lot of issues with the way how we handle these issues. Grenada now, we are loaded with issues pertaining to the people. When you walk the streets of Grenada, you can hear the people fed up. But they ask, what's next? Do you understand? Opposition needs to get themselves together. That's the first thing they should do. Get yourself together. Form a team that is acceptable to the people, and the people will respond. Because you and I can sit here, and as my old folks say, we could talk up to a year. A bowler could bowl. You could have a good bowler bowling from the southern end. You could bowl a good line, a good length. But if you don't have men in the slip, diving for the catch, what's the point? You have politics is like a cricket. You have to have bowlers, you have to have fielders, you must have men in the slips, you must have men in backward shot leg. You must have men that's ready to die to take the catch, and that's how you're going to get the team out. But if two men bowling and nobody feeling, nobody catching, what happened to us? We're just going around in the circles, my brother, and we need to stop that. We need to come together and offer the people of Grenada hope. That's what we need to do at the moment. Opposition, you need to offer the people hope. You cannot go back with the same weak team that got 250-0 in the last 2 elections. Come on. Come with a good team.
So what therefore is the strategy? You say that you need these opposition elements to come together. What therefore is the strategy would you propose for, because I don't imagine that when you speak about the opposition elements, you're speaking basically about the NDC per se. So right. So what therefore do you think is the strategy that can be employed to bring these opposition elements together, to sit around the table, to come up with a position that is going to make them the kind of unit that you're proposing?
Look at the suffering of the Grenadian people. Look at how two men, Dr. Mitchell and Gregory Bowen, has brought this country to its knees. Look at how, for the first time in the history of Grenada, we have a government that has led the country into poverty, real poverty. Look at the hopeless. Listen to the cry of the people. Look at the high unemployment among our young people. Look at the decline in the rural economy. Look at the huge import bill. Look at the lack of planning. Look at Dr. Mitchell making Mawet saying he's minister responsible for youth. Look at all of that. And if that don't get you together, what will? What will? Those are overriding issues. That should tell the opposition it is time for us to be synchronizing and say, well, I am this and I'm that and I'm that, and together you built a stone here, you built a stone there, and you're blowing in the wind and you're blowing in the wind, and at the end of the day, there's nothing happens. Unite and get together. Sit and talk to each other and say, look, we have a fight at hand. Okay? And see how we can do it. And see how you could come up with a team, an acceptable team. The people have to accept that team. You understand? The people have to accept the team. And start now. Go out on the ground, talk to the people, hear the cry. And they want to change. But change to what? If an election were called today, as much as Dr. Mitchell and Gregory Bowen lying to the Grenadian people, as much as they have done, as lot of they have created so much chaos. You know, if an election were called today, sad to say, probably the only seat they may not be able to win is St. Andrews Southwest. You understand? Huh? If I put my hat in the ring, the only seat I believe that the opposition forces can secure is St. Andrews Southwest. If I throw my hat in the ring, but barring that, it might be just a 14-1. You understand? So time for us to get together.
Do you think that in order for these opposition forces to come together, granted that generally speaking there's agreement philosophically, there's agreement as to the mismanagement of the country, the lack of proper governance, the falsehoods that are being spread, the bad decisions that are made. There's philosophically there's agreement on that. What therefore is stopping all of those opposition elements, in spite of the fact that they find common ground on all of these issues? What is it that's holding them back? No, from being able,
the ego and selfishness.
And selfishness.
They want to maintain a little club and a little clique and say what we are done and we are this. And at the end of the day, you can't win.
And that's the thing. So how do we get past that? Are we going to need, people to mitigate, people to, and who can some of these people be? Because there has to be a strategy now in order to move from that philosophical stage to building that cohesive unit that you say is required in order to become a challenge to, quote unquote, the green machine?
Well, first of all, the first thing that we need to do is to talk.
Yes.
And then when an issue pops up, let's exchange notes. And let's see how we would approach it. The GRENLEC issue was not approached the right way.
Okay.
The opposition allowed government to take the narrative and they went down that road with them, repurchasing. You understand? And they forget everything that there's a court judgment. They forget that government has poisoned the new National Party, poisoned the environment, operating environment for WRB. WRB, they no longer wish to operate in that environment. That is the issue at hand. The issue at hand is government trying to push their hands in GRENLEC pocket with an unfair law. Why is it only GRENLEC you want 5% of the pre-tax profit? You want 5% of DCL, cable, the flow, Carib, Clockscoat, Rivers. Do you want 5% of them? SGU? Or you're testing the waters to see who is next? You understand? So, on the issues, you have to be united on the issues. Something pops up, set up a committee, let's see how we're going to approach this issue. What is your thoughts on that? Who you believe should be saying what and should be saying this? This one put out a statement. Then another online group chime in. You understand? And I have to say to the brothers out there, Grenadians hardly shop online. I don't know if they're going to buy their politics online. You have to come on the ground. Because at the end of the day, battles are won and lost in the trenches. And that is where you have to meet Dr. Mitchell. You have to get on the ground, go in the shops, go in the playing field, talk to the youths, roll with them in the mud, and let the people feel that you can invite themselves into the feeling. You understand? And remove that perception that he's the only one that cares about the little man. Because that is what's happening now. There's a perception among the small man that the NNP is the only one that cares about them. Okay? You have to erase that perception. And you have to convince them that what he's doing for you, he's not lifting you. He's cementing you in a position where you are, so that you could be prominent there and he can trample on you. So we need to talk, we need to exchange information, and sometimes have joint platforms. You have a meeting, invite a member that's not a member of your party. Say, come on board, let's go to the public and discuss this issue.
Yes, I remember those days when you were on that platform, although you're not a member of that team.
And listen to me.
Yeah.
We put together a strong coalition in 2008. It was not just NDC that defeated NNP.
Okay.
It was not them. It was not NDC alone. NDC became the beneficiary because they had a team.
Yeah, right.
But the team alone did not defeat them.
Okay.
We had from everywhere chipping in.
We
have to build that coalition again.
Before we close, there's a matter that I would like to get your opinion, your perspective on. And Brother John, there's a clip that you should have lined up there for me. And if you can just play that clip, it's not very long, just a few minutes. Yeah, Brother John, teach us.
The executive of the GOT extends best wishes to all home members and the nation as a whole for a productive and
Can we bring up the
prosperous
volume a bit? Is
2021.
it possible?
2020 was certainly a challenging year for all of us, but with your unwavering support, we wish to inform you that on the 31st December 2020, All Year's Day, a government team led by the Honorable Oliver Joseph met with members of our executive to have a discussion on the 4% salary increase that is due at the end of January 2020. The government's team again requested a deferral of the 4% increase in January. The GUT's team indicated that the mandate given by our members is that there should be no deferral. The GUT's leadership is of the view that a government that can pull $60 million from under the mattress ought not to be seeking a deferral of a mere 4% salary increase. A teacher who is working for $1,500 with the 4% increase will receive $60 more. Yes, only $60. Will it be fair to ask that teacher to wait for that increase? The GOT's team clearly indicated to the government's team that it is expecting every teacher to receive the 4% increase in their salary at the end of January 2021. On another matter, the GOT congratulates Commissioner Edwin Martin on his confirmation in his present post. The GOT yearns for the opportunity to extend similar congratulations to some of our principals who have been acting in their positions for many years before the Commissioner and are yet to be appointed. It is only in Hollywood that people are expected to act for so long. Additionally, we have hundreds of teachers who have been permanently temporary. 2021 will be the year when, in one way or another, this matter must be addressed. Fellow educators, there is an ongoing effort to remove some of the benefits that we have gained over the years. There is a concerted effort made to reduce the opportunity for teachers' professional advancement. There is also a reluctance to remunerate teachers for the upgrade in qualifications. Decisive action must be taken in this regard, and your support will be required. We wish you a safe and prosperous 2021.
So that was from Mr. Andal, the president of the GUT. Well, you would have heard what was said. You hear him speak about teachers who are permanently temporary. I mean, that's an interesting term, to be permanently temporary. And, you know, the increase that is being sought to be deferred. I mean, a teacher working for $1,500 will only be receiving $60, you know, $60 on the monthly salary, and the inflation rate and so on. What's your take on that situation with the teachers and government?
It's rather sad. But to be quite honest with you, the government have no respect for the trade union movement in Grenada anymore. The last industrial action taken by the teachers did not end very well.
Okay.
And therefore, teachers are reluctant now to take any serious job action against the government.
Okay.
And in these difficult times, the pandemic, the economic situation brought along by the pandemic has affected everyone, including the teachers. And when you are not in a position to take industrial action against your employer, your threats become irrelevant. And government knows that. If the union were to call for action today, based on what happened the last time, very few would turn out. The government have broke the backs of the unions. And that is something that opposition needs to address as well. This country was built on with union labor. This is a union country. Our constitution was written by a union leader, starting back in 1951, with Agatha Fraser and the others dying in Lawton Junction to ensure that workers that were lifting the cocoa basket and were getting nothing. Agatha Fraser and the others died to ensure that we got a pension and gratuity installed in the Constitution. It's not there by accident. In 1955, when the GRLP won the most seats in the Legislative Council, they introduced what was then known as the Agatha Fraser Act. And he said, never again shall Grenadian blood be shed, toiling and fighting for their work and right. So he made it, he put it into law. When Grenada got the constitutional provision, he installed it in the Constitution, the pension and gratuity. PIG came in, and they said those who worked from 1983 no longer got a pension.
That's
right.
Not true. That's not true.
NLP came in, they gladly adopted that. And then what they did, they said that any time a politician do 2 terms, they get a pension for life. So here you have politicians retiring in luxury, while the working man retiring in poverty.
I think
in the next 20 years or so, Grenadians would have more poverty among workers than any other part of the region, thanks to this new national party. And hence the reason why we must unite. And we must say to the workers that we must reintroduce serious pension and gratuity. We must ensure that our workers in the golden years, they have something to go by. How can we sit here in that kind of divisive way and watch Dr. Mitchell turn back the gains of 2 serious revolutions, 1951 and 1979, and have put workers in a compromising position where they no longer could even take industrial actions against the government, because he has introduced what he calls now an Imani, where he's sending in his Imani, what you call strike breakers, to intimidate the teachers. My brother, we need to stand up and fight, and we need to renew and revive that fighting spirit. And we need to say to the workers that here is an alternative. Here is a team that would genuinely restore the pension and the gratuity that was installed in the Constitution from 1957, when Agatha Fraser and others died in Latin Junction, fighting to ensure that that right become an alienable right. And that we must do. And whatever it means, we need to do. And we need to stand up and fight. And we are not doing so. We're fighting scattershot, some here, some there. While we're watching one man undo the gains of 2 revolutions, while he and his cronies enjoy the best of our life. Where's the opposition on COVID? Have we asked the government if there is any ventilator in St. Andrews? St. Andrews people don't need ventilators in rural Grenada. So when we get sick, only one hospital? Where are the ventilators for hospital in Maribor? We have 4 MPs here. We're not hearing them. We're not hearing those in St. David's. We're not hearing those in St. Mark's. Yeah. So, brothers, we need to close ranks and start getting it together.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baptiste, for coming through as always. You know, we've been going for some time now, and we've covered quite a bit of ground, and I'm hoping that, you know, we can have you back at some juncture. We can continue conversation, speaking to those issues, the issues of workers' rights, the issues of rural development, the issues of rebuilding the rural economy, the involvement of our diaspora, you know, the delivery of the quality of governance and so that we're experiencing, the need for the opposition elements, the opposition forces, to be able to speak with a united voice and to develop a cohesive unit going forward to be able to challenge the green machine. So thank you very much for being with us, and as we put this afternoon's comfort zone. Brother John, anything that you want to
Yeah,
say?
I just want to just tap in.
Yeah, you were going to.
Yeah, I just want to tap into two things Mr. Baptiste said finally there. In terms of the teachers, I want to let you know that the teachers, even though they will continue striking because they just won the case against the government, have to pay them. The government have to pay them now for the money they deducted from the salary. That is a given now. They have to pay them back, or they lost. The government lost that case. All right, so that they have to pay back that. So they're no longer fearful. They have a good lawyer to back them up now. Again, to take them to take the government to task. They have won that. And the other thing about the pension, the PRG didn't remove all the pension. They make it everybody, not only public servants, but the entire nation could be involved in having a pension, kind of a way of saving. And that was explained to us last night by Cartington Hood. So what you're saying, partly true. This government have messed it up, you know, and do wrong with it. But the intent of the PRG was never to take away pension from nobody, but to make sure everybody in Grenada has a pension. All right? So that I want to just make clear here. However, we have missed Mr. Dr. Fletcher.
Dr. Fletcher.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that, whatever happened there.
There have been some challenge there with him.
Yeah.
Continue.
So again, it was a good conversation, a good show today, Pablo. I really do appreciate you being here again. I want to thank you and sourcing the personnel to be here. Mr. Baptiste, thank you very much again, always, for being very open. And I hope that Pablo might see you on the NDC candidate and ticket. So now I'm just not. I say, hope I might see him on an NDC ticket.
Well, I have no problem with that.
You see, that's what I'm saying.
What I'm interested in is seeing the removal of this government.
I know. I made a statement last night. I will come to Grenada to run for Prime Minister, and one person in the panel said, once your name is not Kit Mitchell, I'm voting for you. So, so probably I might shop in Grenada 6 months, in the next 6 months or next 3 weeks before next election.
I mean, beautiful
Subis?
Subis.
Yeah, could tell.
Behind me.
I could see Marky Rock.
Yeah.
Enjoying the fresh breeze on a Saturday evening. Are you close to the guy who sells his spice on the street there?
Yeah.
All right, tell him I say hello. It's my buddy. Yeah. All right. And don't forget, this evening, make sure you go to the Village Bakery and get down Kosher and get your bread, okay? Tell your brother John saying get some bread from them.
That's my friend there, man. I'm trying to get him to run in the southeast, but he's shying away, man.
No, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. I know. It's my real buddy too. Just tell him John Kelly say hello, you know?
I will.
It's my real buddy, a bona fide friend. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, so that puts a wrap on the comfort zone for this afternoon, Brother John.
Yes.
Thank you again, and thank you to all our viewers. Thank you to those people who continue to join us, to Sonja Sam and to Mila Holder, Shane Ross was with us, Sonia Matlin Scott, and all of the others who joined us here this evening. Yeah, it was really a pleasure having you. And to those who listen behind the scene, Grenada Sunshine, it was good having you with us here this afternoon also. And there are those people who listen behind the scene, you don't see them. We see Doris Maureen Charles was also there, and so on. So thank you all as you continue to try to bring some sense to the conversation. We try to share with you, information that can be reliable information. We try to bring people who are in the know as to what's happening within the country, so that you have an alternative view and you can begin to decide for yourself what is what is really being presented to you, how much is true and what is not true, and so that you can make informed decision, because ultimately you're the one who have to make the decision as to what is best for the country, what is best for us here in Grenada, Carriacou, and the Petit Matlick. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother John,
yes, man,
for having me and for allowing me this opportunity.
All right, and as it is, I'm going to thank you again for being here doing this thing. Looking forward to next week, Saturday evening, afternoon with the Comfort Zone. Yes? And yeah, so again, thank you again. And here is the Comfort Zone.
Yeah, man. All right.
That's my song.
Get out of your comfort zone. In life there will be challenges, testing whether you weak or strong. So don't let obstacles deter you. Just shake up yourself and move on after you. Get out of your comfort zone. You know that life is a mixture of the good, the bad, and ugly. So don't stress yourself over issues that won't change your reality. I tell you. Out of your comfort zone.
Bye, Brother John.
Yes, one love, my brother.
Yes, you have greatness in you. I know that you have greatness in you. Oh, oh, you have greatness in you.
Yes, you got greatness in you because the writing is still on the wall.